Okay, it's 5:30. I'm going to get us started. Good evening. Calling this workshop to order. The time is 5:30 p.m. in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Chapter 551. This workshop is officially open with a quorum present. The following board members are present virtually, and I will now call each of their names in order of their districts. If you would acknowledge that you're with us. District 2 Trustee Toby Jackson. Trustee Jackson.
He's coming on, President Ramos, if you could come back to her.
You got it. Thank you. District 3 Trustee Quentin Phillips.
Good evening, President Ramos. Q Phillips here, representing District 3.
All righty. District 4 Trustee Daphne Brookins.
Good evening, President Ramos. Daphne Brookins, representing District 4.
Good deal. District 5 Trustee CJ Evans.
Good evening, President Ramos.
All right. Good to see you as well. District 6 Trustee Andar.
Good evening, President Ramos. District 6 Trustee Andar.
All righty. District 7 Trustee Norman Robbins.
Present.
All righty. District 8 Trustee Anael Luevanos.
Good evening, President Ramos. Anael Luevanos, representing District 8.
All righty. And District 9 Trustee Ashley Paz. I see you on the screen. All righty. She's present. And I am District 1 Trustee Jacinto Ramos Jr., and I'm present. On March 16th, 2020, the Governor Abbott temporarily suspended certain open meetings requirements imposed by the Open Meetings Act to slow the spread of COVID-19. This action permits meetings subject to the Open Meetings Act to be heard or to be hosted by telephone or video conference. This meeting is being broadcasted live via Spectrum Charter Channel 192, the Forward ISD live channel on YouTube, and a link provided in the agenda. In accordance with those suspended rules, we certify the following. Notice of this meeting has been posted for at least 72 hours. Although members of the board are not gathered in a central physical location, we do have a quorum in attendance at this meeting by video conference or telephone call. We are meeting by use of Zoom software application, which allows two-way communication for members of the public. And as we would at any in-person meeting, members of the public who have followed the instruction on the meeting notice for registering to speak during the public comment portion will be unmuted for 3 minutes to speak. All other meeting procedures will adhere to board adopted procedures to the extent practicable. An audio recording of this meeting is being made and will be available to the public at a later date. We apologize in advance for any unforeseeable difficulties and ask for your patience as we navigate unprecedented times. If you have any questions about these suspended laws, please call the Office of the Attorney General at 888-672-6787 or by email at toma@oag.texas.gov. We will now move to item A, and I will turn it over to Dr. Scribner.
Thank you very much, President Ramos. At this time, we will begin our board workshop and have our public hearing to discuss the annual report for 2020-21 taper report, the Texas Academic Performance Report. With that, I'll turn it over to Jerry Moore and Sarah Rispey, who will take us through this presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Scribner. Good evening, President Ramos, members of the board. We're here tonight to look at our 2019-2020 taper report. That taper stands for Texas Academic Performance Report, and this is part of the public hearing that we do every year as a part of our annual performance report, which will include taper as well as a reminder about the financial reports we've heard, district accreditation status, report on violent and criminal incidents, and some other post-secondary information. You or members of the public can access the taper report on the TEA website. The link is there on the screen. We'll also have it posted on our district website. Campuses post their taper and have hard copies available in the library or office for those members of the public that might want a printed copy. There is In the online report, there is more than what you get in the paper report, so it's great to know that the online there for more information. So for Fort Worth ISD, our accountability rating for 2020 was not rated, declared state of disaster. This rating is the same rating given to all Texas districts and campuses due to the pandemic. In 2020, we also held the special education determination status of needs assistance for some special ed program indicators that we are working on as a district. Included in the TAPER report will be, obviously this year, not any 2020 STAR performance that we usually would be seeing because those exams were canceled in the spring due to the pandemic, and that includes the participation rate. But we have other things that you see bulleted on the screen there, including student and staff information and some of the things you're used to seeing as a part of this report annually. First of all, let's look at our student ethnic distribution. So on the screen, you'll see our Fort Worth ISD distribution of students, as well as the Texas public school students. So not representing Texas as a state with all the adults, but this is public school students. You'll see that in Fort Worth, we have about 63% of our students are Hispanic compared to about 53% at the state level. We have 22% of our students African-American compared to 13% at the state level. So we have more Hispanic and more African-American students than in public schools statewide. We have 11% approximately of white students compared to 27% public school students in Texas, and then 2% other. That would include Asian, Pacific Islander, Native American, and those groups. So overall, we see that Fort Worth ISD has significantly greater percentage of Hispanic and African American students compared to public schools statewide and less white students. Next, we look at those students, how our students are enrolled by program. So starting with the darker blue bar to the left for Fort Worth and for Texas, we see that in our bilingual and ESL, which stands for English as a Second Language program, Fort Worth has about 34% of our students in bilingual ESL compared to 21% at the state. So obviously more students here by about 13 percentage points. We're fairly comparable on CTE enrollment with 49% at the district and 51% at the state. We have more GT students identified, more students identified as gifted and talented at 12.6% compared to 8.1% of public students in the state. And then comparable on special ed enrollment to the state public students. Some additional demographic information on the next slide shows our economic disadvantage status. We have about 84% of our students that qualify for free and reduced lunch or other assistance compared to about 60% at the state, so significantly more. We see the state there. The next one over is ELs, or English learners. You'll hear that term used and see it used in the TAPER report, ELs and LEP, meaning limited English proficient, and they use those interchangeably. We have about 34% of our students who are English learners, meaning they have not yet acquired English proficiency and English is not their first language, compared to 20% at the state. And then finally, in that tan bar, at-risk students, as a district, we have about 65% of our students at risk compared to 51% at the state. And at-risk is a state-defined term. So many people have an idea in their head of what they think that means, but the state defines that very clearly for us as a number of about 13 factors can put a student in that category: being retained, failing 2 or more core subjects in a given school year, being pregnant, having been homeless, or a parent incarcerated are just a few of the things that would classify a student as at risk. On the next slide, we'll look at our attendance data, and this is for the 18-19 school year. So this is not impacted by pandemic. This is for a regular school year, if you will. We are at 95.1% for the district, and you can see a comparison there to the state, very similar. And then for our student groups, you notice that our white and Hispanic students, the same at 95.5%, are above the district and also above the state average. And our EL students, our English learners, are the highest group that you see there. They're all the way to the right, that bar 96.2%, higher than the district, the state, and the region. So good job for our English learner students. Want to point out as well, though, that of note, we see that our African American attendance at 93.5 and our special ed attendance 93.8, while high, lag behind the other groups. So this is certainly something that we are aware of and will focus on in our equity work, as well as our partnership with Reed Fort Worth, where we have an attendance focus. We want to go to the next slide. Annual dropout rate is reported in TAPER for 2 classes. One is middle school, given 7th and 8th grade. And that's what this one represents. We're at 1.5%, and that would be the number of students in 7th and 8th grade during the 18-19 school year who dropped out as compared to all students enrolled. We see here that our African American dropout is a bit higher, coupled with that rate that we saw a minute ago with a slightly lower attendance rate. That's something, again, that we are paying attention to. The 2 or more group is a very small number of students for the district as a whole, and so have a higher rate there, but it's with a small number. And as we all know, statistically, when you have a small number, that can cause a wide swing. But we're definitely aware of and watching that 2 or more group. The next one will be grades 9 through 12, our high school grades. Again, for the 18-19 school year, the district is at 3%, which is about a point higher than the state. We see, again, that our African American is higher than our Hispanic and White, our other 2 major groups. And here we see our special ed group is especially high. So for students that are still receiving special ed services in high school, we want to be sure that they are, their ARD committees are meeting, setting reasonable expectations for them, and that we are helping and watching them to graduation. You also notice that at high school, the EL group, the English learner dropout rate is a bit higher than it was at the other grade levels. So again, another group that needs targeted support and assistance to make sure that they are staying in school and being successful at completing that. The next slide is going to show us our 4-year longitudinal graduation rate. The last 2 slides were annual rates, so they were just within a year. This is actually a 4-year rate that tracks students who were first freshmen in the 15-16 school year all the way through to their graduation as a cohort of 20. And the pink part of each bar is the graduates. There's a very thin line that is the those that got the high school equivalency, which is the TXCHSE. Then we have a little group that continues in high school. And then on the top is the dropout that we just looked at for an annual, but this is for the cohort. The all students bar is there on the left of your screen. You can see that same information for each student group and how that differs. I want to point out that with our special ed students, we see less graduates in the 4-year because many of the students that we serve are intended to go on past 4 years. We continue serving some of our special ed students for 5, 6 years, some of them all the way till they're 21. So some of that is intentional as a part of the goals set by their placement committees. The next slide will show us some college, career, and military ready graduates. So as a percent of those who graduated in the pink box on the last slide, these are the graduates and the percents that were college, career, and military ready. You see the district here is marked with the tree compared to the state region, and then for each of our student groups. The dark blue part of the bar at the bottom is those that met a college ready indicator. The top lighter blue of the bar is those that met career or military indicator. And so we see some differences among the groups there. Again, special ed looks a little different because we have college ready and more that are career ready that went through some of our programs, preparing them for a post-secondary opportunity after school. So that's a noticeable difference. We'll also notice here that our African American and our English learner students have a lower total bars there. something that we are targeting with our equity work and our academics, and making sure that the opportunities are available to every student to pursue college, career, and military readiness. This slide I won't read to you, but I just wanted to remind you of the factors that go into college, career, and military readiness. There are multiple ways that a graduate can meet that. And some graduates tick off more than one box, but only one of these is needed. Also to note that currently the military is not included because the state is still working with the Department of Defense to get that incorporated. So we do have kids that are actually going into the military that may not be included in those numbers. Definitely an honorable and worthy career path. Next, I wanted to put in the criteria for the Texas Success Initiative. Again, I'm not going to read those to you, but I think there was a question last time about what the cuts were to meet college readiness for SAT, ACT, or the TSIA, that assessment that used to be called AccuPlacer. So I just wanted to be sure that we had that there in case that question was still out there. The next part actually looks at SAT, so transitioning from that. This is the class of 19 cohort again, and this is looking at average SAT score for all subjects. And just a reminder that the three subtests are math, reading, and writing. So 1600 would be the perfect score. This is the average score for the district at 926. You'll see the state is about 100 points above that, so at 1027. And then you see for the different student groups what their average SAT score is. And I know the board remembers that we give an SAT school day to make sure that every student gets an opportunity to take the SAT. Students can also retake that to increase their score after that if they would like to. Next slide is showing the ACT score. So some students are applying to colleges that give preference to SAT, some to ACT, and we give our students the opportunity to take both. So ACT, this is our average score. The total possible is 36. And the average score here for the district is 19.6, the state 20.6. So it's on a different scale. The numbers look very different there. And then you can see the average score for each of our student groups. And again, we began first with the school day SAT and then expanded to offer the school day ACT. So all students have the opportunity to take both of those tests. The next slide shifts gear a little bit, and now we're looking at our teacher distribution. Again, this is comparing the Fort Worth ISD teachers to all Texas public school teachers. You'll notice that the majority of public school teachers, both in Fort Worth ISD and the state, are white. We have compared then on the next bar over, the light kind of, the slightly darker piece of the pie for the bluish green is our Hispanic teachers. We have 24% about Hispanic teachers compared to 28% for the state, so slightly less, but with the number of Hispanic students being our majority, definitely less than our Hispanic students. An interesting comparison, though, is that Fort Worth ISD is right in line on our African-American teachers with about our percent of African-American students. So we have 21.4% African-American students compared to about 11% at the state. We're really meeting that match to our student distribution as far as African-American students are concerned. You'll remember that that was 21.7 is our percent of African-American student enrollment. The next slide looks at teacher years of experience. And we often hear concerns about, large urban districts having way too many beginning teachers. When we actually look at Fort Worth ISD compared to other Texas public schools, you'll notice that that gray slice of the pie is beginning teachers. We're at 6.1%. The state is at 7.4%. Coming down sort of around the right-hand side clockwise, that teal part, if we show that in the 1 to 5 year range, we have 30.4% of our teachers are in that 1 to 5 year range. At the state, it's 27.9. So we a little bit more of the 1 to 5 year teachers. Then coming on around, we look at the 6 to 10 year teachers. We have about 18%, the state's at about 19. And then the tan part, we're very similar in the 11 to 20 range as the state, as well as that dark teal part, which shows the 20 years and over. So overall, our distribution is pretty comparable to the state on teacher years of experience as far as public school students. And I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Steinert, who's going to lead us through the violent and criminal incident portion of the report.
Thank you, Sarah. So each year, as part of our Safe and Drug-Free Schools and Communities Act, we share with you information specifically about those most serious violent and criminal incidents that have occurred in the past year. So on the next slide, you will see a breakdown by categories. The top line is the 21 violation student code of conduct. That's the largest bucket of codes that we use for general violations of the student code of conduct. So as such, you'll see that the vast majority of incidents that happen in schools get captured in that code. And within Code 21, there are many subcodes that capture each individual type of behavior that we outline in the student code. Below the 21 line, you'll see the most serious offense codes. These are TEA offense codes and generally have to do with criminal behavior that might involve a citation. So on the left-hand column, you'll see the 2018-19 school year, which was an entire school year with kids in attendance in person. The right-hand side, you'll see this past year where, no surprise, because of COVID, we saw a decrease in all incidents across the board because we had 3 months less of kids in person at school. We did notice one anomaly. Everything categorically decreased, but on line 41, where it says fighting mutual combat, that code is specifically for fights that occur and a citation is given to the student or students by a police officer. What happened last year is there were some changes in the state codes in the wording, and so in our system, we made those modifications. When we did that, that code 41 was listed right after the code 21 for fighting, which is a general fight on campus, no ticket issue. So what happened this past year is we had administrators mistakenly choose the 41 instead of the 21. When we look back historically, that code 41, those fights where tickets or issues, usually fall in the 20 to 30 per year range. So in 18-19, we had 30, which would have been normal. This current school year, given that we also have a hybrid situation with kids in attendance, we anticipate that number will be even lower. But with regards to the 41, we did make a clarification in the focus system so that administrators can now see exactly which one is which. And we're sending communication out to the administrators later this week so that they know exactly how to handle that moving forward. But overall in our district, general trends for juvenile justice placements and DAAP placements have been trending downwards for several years prior to COVID. Sarah?
Thank you, Mr. Steiner. On the next slide, we just have a link to our PEIMS financial standard report. These reports have previously been presented by our CFO, Mike Ball. But just to keep that in line with our annual report requirements, the link is there for you if you'd like to refer back to them. As a final piece of our report, we receive information from the Texas Higher Ed Coordinating Board about our graduates that they track as enrolling in a Texas state, public, or private institution. So on the next slide, we've got for the class of 2018, so this is a couple of years back, it lags by the time that students graduate, then enroll in college, and that's reported back to us. I'm going to start actually from the bottom there. You will see that in the class of 2018, under total graduate column, at the bottom, we had 4,490 graduates. The next line up says 1866 were not found. That doesn't mean that we lost students. It means that when the Texas Higher Ed Coordinating Board in the fall of 2019 looked for those graduates, they did not find them enrolled in a Texas public college or a private college that reports to Higher Ed Coordinating Board. So this could mean a couple of things. It could mean that we have, and we do have students that go outside of Texas to college. So we have a lot of students that go right over the state line up to Oklahoma and to a variety of other colleges. They are not included in these data, even though they are college attenders. We also have some students that do not go to college right at the fall after graduation. So that doesn't mean they may not attend later. And so there are additional reports that we track those. The 515 not trackable are students who had a mismatch between their ID that they used while they were enrolled in public school and what they enrolled in college with us. So Jerry Moore might be a common name, and if they found Jerry Moore with one ID number in Fort Worth ISD graduates and another in college, they would call that not trackable. They can't be sure it's the same person. We had 204 graduates enroll in independent colleges and universities in Texas. We had 1,149 enroll in two-year public colleges like Tarrant County College, where many of our graduates go to begin their post-secondary career. And then 756 who enrolled in a four-year public university in Texas. On the next slide, just a reminder that campus plans we're not providing those tonight. They were presented to the board on October 10th, and you can reference those on the district's Policy and Planning Department webpage under CEIP. And that's our presentation for this evening. Happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you. Looks like we're going to have questions or comments. I'll begin with Trustee Andar, then I'll come to Trustee Brookins and Trustee Jackson.
Thank you, President Ramos. And thank you, Ms. Risby, for that wonderful report. I appreciate the time and effort that went into putting that together. A couple of questions that arose as I was listening to your report. Did you mention, and I may have missed it because there was a lot of data, what is the percent of ELs in Fort Worth ISD of English learners?
I'm flipping on my notes, and I think that out of our demographics, we had that reported, Lisa. My page numbers are really light. I think it's on about slide 7, Trustee Dar, and we can send this to you if the board doesn't have this in the presentation. Our percentage of English learners is listed there at 34.2%.
Okay, that's pretty high.
Yes, that was compared to the state at 20.3. So
Wow.
We are much higher than the state.
Okay, thank you for going back to that data. It got right by me.
One more forward, Lisa. There we go.
Okay, thank you.
That middle blue bar.
Yes, I see it now. Thank you so much.
Sure.
The special education. So we have been identified for needs assistance in that category. What determines, what are the determinants to decide if a district needs assistance in special education?
Good question. And I went back and looked it up to make sure I could remember this answer. So the district can be rated meets, needs assistance, needs intervention, or needs substantial intervention. So what that means is there are some indicators that are monitored for various programs by the state under our results-driven accountability. It's sort of a separate system that districts are monitored under. If you miss more than 3 or 4 of those indicators in a category, you may get needs assistance. That's what we got. That was based for us specifically on special ed graduation rate, dropout rate, and discretionary placements for discipline, as well as significant disproportionality of special ed African American students in discipline placement. So that's something that the state has asked the district to look at. They have a system that we do that under, and Mr. Moore will be more able if you want information about what happens after we get that designation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
I'm still on my special ed train right now. What are we doing to curb our special ed dropout rate? That's pretty high. And it kind of goes along with another question I have, which is on page 13 of the presentation, it listed the different ways that a student can qualify and we get the credit for CCMR, that they're considered CCMR ready. And one of them is IEP mastery and career readiness. It seems to me that if it's an individual education plan, that we should be having more success, or am I misunderstanding that?
You're correct. The IEP is set by the ARD committee, and if the student meets that and has the career readiness indicator, they count in those CCMR numbers. Mr. Moore may want to add some more about how we're supporting special ed students academically.
Certainly. Thank you, Sarah. Trustee Dark, great question. I appreciate that very much. As a part of our strategic support plan that we developed in response to the results-driven accountability system, we focused one of our three major initiatives on responding to our graduation and dropout rate. We have four major plans that we have that have gone into effect this year. One, looking at the enrollment of our students that are receiving special education services enrolled in our Gold Seal programs of choice, looking at our students and making sure that students receiving special education service have the opportunity for programming that they are selecting, programming that they are connected to in those specific pathways. We're also looking at our transition specialists. Transition specialists are special education staff that support our students as they transition from one schooling environment to the next level up. Also working with our students to make sure as they get into high school, they're looking at the credits that are required to graduate based off of their IEP, as well as their graduation plans, and then success that our students are obtaining with end of course exams, whether they be a student that actually would test end of course, or a student that would have an equivalent documented in their IEP. Those transition specialists also work with our parents, our students, and our teachers to look at individualized graduation plans. As you were saying earlier, if a student has an IEP, shouldn't we have a greater percentage of those students being successful with that individualized academic plan? That's exactly what the intent here is, but needing to get in front of what our graduation plans are earlier so that we're starting with our students in our middle school grades to have a pathway that leads to success and then support that plan in their IEP all the way to high school. And then the final area when it comes to graduation and dropout rates that we're focused in on is making sure that we're looking at students that have the potential to graduate within those 4 years, not those students that we know we want to serve in 5, 6, up to age 21 in specialized programs, but students that are receiving special education services that should be graduating within those 4 years. Really making sure we have a high school completion plan for those students and that we use our special education staff integrated not only with the ARD committee, but with campus staff to make sure that we have a specific plan for graduation within those 4 years. All of those, we have a team that is specifically looking at increasing the implementation we have in all of our campuses.
Okay, thank you for that very thorough answer. With the transition specialist, is there a transition specialist on every high school campus, or at least, and I know we have more than just our comprehensive high schools, so it may be that there are some campuses that share a transition specialist depending on the need on that campus, but does every campus have access to a special education transition specialist?
Yes, we do have not one on every campus, but we do have transition specialists that cover the entire school district, and there is someone assigned to support each of our campuses. That is correct. Well,
and I agree with you that that is a critically important position, critically important. One last question for Mr. Steiner is in relation to the student records and I didn't write down the actual terminology you used as far as the fighting code, yes. Either 41 or 21, that if those have been recorded incorrectly, then we've got students who have incorrect information in their records. And are we going back in to the student records to make sure that those are coded correctly, because that can affect their future?
Right. So we did initiate a conversation with Rhonda Fields in our PEMS office this week to talk about, can we go back in? We have the opportunity every year to correct incorrect PEMS codes before we submit them to the state. So we're having that discussion right now about getting those corrected. Thank you for asking that. That is an important point.
Well, and again, it's important for us as a district, but it's especially important for those kids who have those codes on their record. So I'm glad to hear that you're having that conversation. Thank you. That's all my questions. Those are all my questions. Thank you so much.
Okay, next we have trustee Brookins.
Okay. I have three sets of questions. So the first one is I'm looking at the college readiness. Are we offering the college readiness program to all of the schools? Because I'm looking at the numbers and they are significantly different than our Caucasian students. So if we aren't, why aren't we? And how can we fix it? That's the first question. The second, well, I'll let you go ahead and answer that because it's three different areas.
Sure. Mr. Moore, I can say that we do the school day ACT and SAT for all of our schools, so those are offered district-wide. And I want to let Mr. Moore talk about the academic programs.
Actually, thank you, Sarah. I actually want to kick it over to Dr. Sines and let him give you an opportunity to respond to that. And then, David, if you'll let me come back and add in a piece of where we're going in the future for SAT prep and college readiness prep, I'd like to add that.
For sure. Definitely. Thank you, Ms. Brookins, for the question. But no, we do offer there's various programs. As you saw that list of ways that students could achieve a CCMR measure. So as was mentioned, we offer ACT, SAT school day now for all campuses, all students. That started a few years back with SAT, and it's been 2 years now for ACT. Every school, every comprehensive school, and then depending on the size of the special schools, our schools of choice, offer some sort of a CTE strand that leads to a certificate. And those vary within the STEM programming, within a teaching program, and within, it can be culinary. But one thing we've done in the last few years is to ensure that each of those pathways leads to a certificate that can count towards CCMR. But every high school does have a CTE program as well. And then, of course, each one of our schools now offers an on-ramps program, which is a college credit through the University of Texas. Each of our campuses all offers AP courses as well.
I hear you.
And so, can you also hear me? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. and we also offer dual credit pathways. Another step we've taken is that by next year, 9 of our high schools will also have early college programs embedded into them as well. So in the last 3 years, we made every effort to ensure programming is equitable across the district. And now we're working at that performance level as well to ensure that those performance levels also match as well.
So do you think that our numbers are low because of what, marketing, or they're just not taking advantage of those opportunities, or why do you think our numbers are so low?
No, it's going to be that performance measure, right? And so now we have more access to the courses. Now we have to start working on that and making sure that we close that success gap as well. I would say that's where we need to go next with it, is to ensure that those programs not only offered equitably, but that our success matches that equity as well.
And Trustee Brookins, if I could add to that, kind of where we're going in the future for preparing our students for post-secondary. One of our initiatives from the academics division is to look at all of our high school level curriculum and not have SAT prep as something separate, to integrate that work into the curriculum so that all students enrolled in high school are having an opportunity to prepare within the curriculum and each of their core content areas to be successful on those SAT standards and those measures that we're expecting of our students. So all students have the opportunity, while we're testing during the day, to have preparation so that we can hit those marks so that more of our students can be considered post-secondary ready.
Jerry, so does that start at 9th grade?
Yes. That's what I was going to add to is specifically next week when we have principals meeting, we're focusing on 9th grade teams and ensuring that we have our post-secondary readiness, a team of at every campus that's going to focus on each one of those criteria we just discussed. And I would also add, speaking as a parent, that just recently texts went out to all parents of the students who took the SAT on preparation courses that they can take and engage in to strengthen their math and their reading skills for the SAT. And so that's something different that we've not done before. And every parent should have gotten that message if you had a junior that took it and they have an opportunity to strengthen and be able to retake the test and do better. So I was excited to not only see that for all students, but to see that for my own child. And I signed her up whether she wanted to be or not. So I'll just add that.
and Trustee Brookins, I want to add to that, you know, the one way, as you mentioned, what's the disconnect is we have to go down to the individual student. And that's where we've built our systems now. We talked about ninth grade success teams and even our seniors that we're looking at where they are at now. And going student by student and what makes the most sense in their career path. And then you tie that back to even middle school, and we can go further, but in middle school where they're finally picking their 4-year plans and tying those all together into a system versus a kind of disparate connection of AP, on-ramps and all that. That's important, but what's that student need starting at the middle school level and going into high school?
Now, are any of these opportunities going to be offered during the summer as well, or just during the school year?
We are looking to see how we can offer those in the summer, especially this year. Of course, we have a shorter window, but it's something that we look to continue doing because our students can still earn those earn different measures over the summer as well.
Okay, thank you. 2 quick questions. For the Code of Conduct report, that report was the only one that I didn't see that had like the pie chart for the breakdown of ethnicity, and I would love to see that with all the different violations. Who's doing all of that? Is there a way we can get a breakdown on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. We have those slides. They're just not in this deck, but I can forward those on to Ms. Molinar to share with y'all.
Okay. And then my last question is, I saw how you were capturing the enrollments for college or higher education. What if a student decides to take a gap year and comes back the next year? Will still be counted, or does it just go right after they graduate onto?
We do have some reports. They're not included as a part of the taper, but we do have some with the 2 year after the 3. So we can definitely share those with you. We get those both from the Higher Ed Coordinating Board and from the National Student Clearinghouse for some of the schools outside of Texas.
Okay, because I know that some of them are coming back. They're either going straight to work and then they're coming back later on to try to pick up those courses. So, okay.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Jackson, I've seen a hand raised earlier. Are you good now?
Trustee Brookins actually asked my questions. Thanks, Trustee Brookins.
All right, good deal. Next, we have Trustee Paz.
Thank you, President Ramos. So I have just 2 questions. So one, I'm actually not finding this presentation in my district email. Would it be possible to have that sent to us? I don't know if my colleagues have it or not, but
definitely.
It's an easy one. And then thank you to Trustee Brookins for asking about the breakdown of our discipline numbers by student group. That would be really helpful information to see. I agree with that. And I have an additional question about the Code 21. So I seem to recall that as part of our racial equity conversations, one of the goals was to, and I might be imagining this, I will lean on my colleagues to help me remember, and you all as well, that we were attempting to get away from using the Code 21 criteria when possible. So is that something that we're still working towards? And if so, is that, I see that we have a significant drop. Is that because we were in school for 3 fewer months than the year before, or is this because of a kind of a combination of the two?
Yeah, so actually a couple things we started working on a year ago in concert with Mrs. Breed and the equity team. We brought them together and we looked at all the existing PEMS codes for a couple of reasons. We wanted to get rid of things that were redundant because within that 21, as I said, there's probably 70 different specific behavior codes. So 21 fighting, 21 profanity, 21 insubordination, those types of things. So we reviewed them all, number one, to get rid of redundancy, but number two, with an equity lens to look at the codes that were in that we felt like were judgmental in the language they used. Were not equitable in the language they used. So we did minimize that list quite a bit when we did that. And then this past year, along with that group and student and school support, we sat down and looked at the actual student code. And you may remember we talked about it back in the fall where we started making revisions to the code through that equity lens, knowing that there was a lot of content in there that did not reflect the values of us as an organization moving forward with respect to equity. So that work's going to continue. But within those code 21s, you're right, we wanted to get away from it being a general dump all. So we created more specific categories. And if you'd like, we can generate a report for you all so that you can see within 21 what numbers land in each one of those subcategories. As you said, we had 14,000 plus last year. So those are distributed across a bunch of different subcodes, and we can send that to you if you like.
Yeah, that would be great. And then just one final thing. It's not really a question, just an observation. We're still using language that is tied to like the census and like very technical language towards our student groups, as opposed to using the language of our racial equity that we've agreed upon through our racial equity work. So I would love if we could potentially start getting away from that in the future as we have more of these reports. That's all.
Thank you. Looks like Trustee Phillips is next.
Thank you, President Ramos, and thank you, Trustee Brookins and Trustee Haas, because they definitely hit one of the things I had a question about, which was that Code 21. So thank you, Mr. Steiner. Look forward to that report with the racial demographic breakdown, as well as what those breakdown codes look like now as well. That'd be really, really, really great information to have. Other than that, since that's been answered, I guess just asking more generally now, particularly to Sarah, to Jerry, and to Dr. Scrivener, what are y'all feelings behind this report? How do y'all feel about it, the status of this report?
If you don't mind, Mr. Phillips, I'll start there. I think this is a difficult time to really get a solid grasp of our accountability with kind of this pause because of the pandemic. I think it's still a work in progress. I think we came back as we set new board goals over a year ago now, or almost a year ago now, and we showed where our students are achieving and where we want to go with that achievement. I think we've seen really positive signs and moving in the right direction. I think our national level testing, our MAP assessment is yielding us positive results. We've had trends going in the right direction with our end of course exams from December of last year. So I think our plan is getting where it needs to be. We need to continue to support our students in whichever environment they're learning in, whether it be virtual or in person, to continue focusing on quality daily instruction with our teachers and make sure that that the plans that we put in place are carried out and yield the results we need for our students.
I would say, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that I definitely agree with your assessment there, Jerry, for sure. But is that based upon this report, or is that based upon the work done since this report?
Yeah, I appreciate that question as well. I think that's based on my collective experience with where we are, along with the data that we see here, and know that there's work to focus on. feel free to allow Dr. Scribner a chance to respond as well. His thinking.
Yeah, and I apologize, Dr. Scribner. Go right ahead. I'd love to hear you.
No, thank you, Trustee Phillips. Couple things about the report speak to me. One is obviously the impact of the pandemic, the impact of COVID, where some of these data were impacted as a result of 3 months of less attendance. Some areas were on the right path, but obviously now with half of our students virtual and half of our students in person, getting a new baseline is going to be a challenge. But taking a step back and looking at where I think your question is coming from is this speaks to the importance of our racial equity work. Racial equity is student outcomes, academic outcomes, but also outcomes in these areas of social and emotional learning and health. Systems get the results they're designed to get, and we're talking about systemic racism and the impact of poverty in our city. The fact that where we have struggling schools whose data is not where we want it to be, those also are communities that are struggling in many other social areas, economic areas, et cetera. So not to make excuses, but obviously we are all in this together. We created this system over many decades together, and we need to untangle it. And I think again the courage of this board in addressing these issues that ultimately affect our academic outcomes is the right work.
Indeed, and so I promise you, man, that this was a general inquiry and not a leading question, but you're absolutely right in your answer. So thank you for that, Sarah. I'll go ahead and listen.
Yeah, I think concur completely with what Dr. Scribner and Jerry said. I would also say that this report, unlike some of the other reports that I helped the team bring to the board, our Lone Star governance work is very timely and brings you information that's what's happening at the beginning of this school year, at the middle of this school year. This report is by nature a compliance report, reporting factors that we are required to include each year at this time for TEA. And some of them are very lagging data. So they're from the 18-19 school year or the 19-20, not the current school year. That said, I think that it's good that we do look back at that because we need to keep that context. Dr. Scribner said that where we are didn't happen overnight. And so taking this look back is not a bad thing, as we pay a lot more attention, however, to what's happening currently and making sure that we are going in the right direction and make those corrections in real time under the Lone Star governance work that the board has adopted. And just as Ms. Paz pointed out, and this has some language that maybe isn't the language that we would normally choose to use. It's reflective of census language and some other things that are just part of the system in the state report.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. And you put it perfectly, because I was going to make sure I try to put this into a bow tie. We'll put a bow tie on this where it's our goal progress measures, our constraint progress measures, are connected to this report. And the positive thing, I'll speak for what's true for me as one trustee, that when I first came on this board, I was seeing this every year, and it always felt like, why did I let all this time go by? And what am I not doing as a trustee? How am I contributing to the lack of improvement in our school system? The plus for us, that I think for us as school board and superintendent team, is that we are now looking at data regularly, and at every board meeting, it's a priority. So that when we get to this point next year, this isn't going to be, there aren't as many, if any, surprises, because hopefully we've addressed them in our goal progress measures and or constraint progress measures. Now, and if we're, and the other part to that is that we agreed that these should be predictive of the outcomes, and no one expected a pandemic. Now that we're dealing with it, we're getting as you said, Sarah, we're getting info now versus waiting till the end of the year. So we're looking at our inputs, outputs, and I'm glad that our board is leaning into this work so that we're not surprised when we get that outcome at the end of the year. Thank you. Okay. Let me make sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I couldn't find the raise your hand feature. Thank you all for this report. There was a lot of data in there. And just to kind of piggyback on some of the other trustees' questions, COVID or not, we know we have a lot of work to do in terms of equity and achievement. And, Trustee Brookins asked the question about the CCMR offerings for the summer. And I remember a past report where we've gotten some of the lost learning for COVID, is primarily going to be in math. And so I would love to see, what our plans are for, continuing to address these achievement gaps with the lens of racial equity. And I know we are, but just want to echo that, but then to see how practically we can do that in the coming summers, not just for CCMR high school courses, but so.
Yeah, Trustee Evans, that is definitely information that we can bring to this board. Members of Dr. Sines' team, as well as members of the academic team, are creating what our summer learning plan is right now. And so as we get ready to roll that out, we will definitely bring that to the board so that you're aware of what our opportunities for recapturing learning loss. I will tell you one of the areas that we continue to focus on, you've heard me say this the last couple of presentations that we've done, has to be a focus on high quality tier 1 instruction for all students. How are we continuing to work with our teachers to understand our definition of quality literacy instruction through our literacy framework, our reading academies work that we're doing with our teachers at the elementary level, and then our instructional framework, our definition, our common definition across the district of what quality instruction looks like. That is the first step. Make sure every student in every classroom is exposed to the highest quality level of daily instruction. And then how do we look at those systems that go in to provide additional learning opportunities for students? So we'll be sure to bring that back to you as that is designed and rolled out for us.
Okay. I think that's all the questions and hands raised from the board. Thank you, staff. Appreciate you. We will move on to 2B, which is public comment to discuss the annual report of the 2020-2021 Texas Academic Performance Report, otherwise known as TAPER. Mr. Bond, do we have any public comment on this topic?
No one has signed up to speak, sir.
Okay. Thank you. So then we'll move on to number 3, which is the public hearing is now closed. Item number 4 is public comment in general. Staff, do we have any public comment speakers?
No, sir, there are none.
Okay, so we will skip that big paragraph and move on to number 5. 5A, update on budget development process for the 2021-2022 budget. Dr. Scribner, we'll hand it back to you, or we'll hand it to you and Mr. Ball.
Thank you very much, President Ramos. At this time, I'd like to introduce our Chief Financial Officer, Mike Ball, and he will take us through an update on budget development process for the 21-22 budget year, along with David Johnson.
Thank you, Dr. Scribner. President Ramos, I do want to kind of begin by setting the context of this presentation, and we'll ask Mr. Johnson to take us through it. And I would like to thank David publicly and the budget team for the great work they've done in putting all these numbers together. As the board likely knows, we are in the midst of a decline in enrollment. And that, of course, leads to a decline in revenue that's available to us. And so what we're the objective tonight is to communicate the situation to the board and sort of mirror the communications that we've already done with our leadership groups, and to communicate the fact that we do have a plan, and that part of our plan is to build consensus after having communicated the need among our leadership group to foster an environment where we're working on this together, that we can't right size our budget just in the budget department and the finance division. We've got to all work together. So we really are trying to foster that sort of atmosphere. And David will talk some about that. And I would be remiss if I didn't comment on the fact that we are standing on the shoulders of those who have come before us, in that they have placed the district in a great financial position. We have a very healthy fund balance, and the healthy fund balance gives us time in order to respond to our decline in enrollment, and thus the decline in revenues, in an orderly manner that has the least negative impact on student instruction, which obviously is our core business. And so we do have a plan, and the district is in great financial shape, and we're going to be okay. And so I think that's the takeaway for tonight's progress report on our budget development. And with that said, I'd like to turn it over to our senior officer for budget, Mr. David Johnson, and he'll walk us through the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Ball. If we could go to the first slide, please. The one thing that we want to focus on in this cycle are the actuals. So the data that I'm going to be presenting tonight is actual data, and there are no projections. That's going to be the basis for the beginning of the budget and drive our staffing numbers. This cycle, we will focus on the knowns and adjust to our current reality, as Mr. Ball said a second ago. This is a legislative year, and there will be a lot of information coming out. But throughout this cycle, I think it's important to focus on the current law until we know otherwise. So we're going to focus on what we know, and until we find out something different. We will develop the budget accordingly based on those statements. Collaboration and consensus on moving forward. The leadership team has been meeting on this since October, and so we've had a lot of communication and to develop this plan collaboratively as the leadership team. So, slide, please. Annually, districts across the state of Texas submit data to the Texas Education Agency. It's known as the Fall Snapshot. It's through the PEAMS cycle. This is a uniform measurement date throughout the state, and this data is the student data. You can see on the last Friday of October last year, we had just under 83,000 students. The same date this year, we had just under 77,000 students. So we've had a decline of 6,000 students. And just to kind of put that in perspective, we look at a couple of comparisons. If we look at a neighboring district for a school district, that's the equivalent of what we've lost as far as student population. If we look at the smallest 16 elementary campuses last year, that was just under 5,800 students. So those are for comparison purposes only. We just kind of want to draw an order of magnitude to the board's attention so that we can kind of put that in perspective. Slide, please. This is the same information time frame that I referred to in the last slide. So this is the FTEs, or our staff, that have served the students that we talked about in the previous slide. A year ago, we had just under 11,000 students. This year, we declined that number by 220 students to 10,649. Made really, really good strides, but given the fact that COVID, and we've had a substantial change of our student population, it obviously is becoming the issue here. And again, to kind of mirror the same analysis of the same comparison on the previous slide, those 6,000 students at those 16 campuses were served by about 745 FTEs. And again, to compare it to a neighboring 4A school district, ISD had a total staff of 726. Progress has been made, but I think that we still have some work to do. Slide, please. I think that graphs are always helpful, and this graph shows our student enrollment over a baseline year of 2012. We can see that in 2012, we grew steadily until 2017 at a peak of about 87,233 students. The birth rate dipped. We had a charter impact that was unprecedented, so those two things combined led us to a decline in enrollment for the past 3 years. Obviously, COVID was unusual to say the least, and we experienced a 7% decline above what we had anticipated. So if you look over the past 5 years, we've dropped about 12% in our student population, and that's what we're looking at, and that is our current reality. What I've done here is add a line of the red line is the staffing line. So if we look back to our baseline year of 2012, we can see that we grew from a student population up through 2017. We dipped in 2013. That was a result of the 83rd legislative session, which was really the last big time we had a decline in revenue. Fort Worth made adjustments and compensated. And then over the next few years, added programs and added staff to address those programs and student needs. You can see that in 2019, we peaked and we continue. We have, over the last 2 years, we've made strides in right sizing our enrollment or our staffing relative to our enrollment. But as this slide clearly indicates, we've got to focus on right sizing our staff. As you know, approximately 85% of the district general fund expenditures are payroll. Slide, please. In the 2021-22 budget cycle, what we want to do is on that previous graph, we really need those two numbers to more those two lines to really more parallel. And so the district and the leadership team has a comprehensive plan to right size the staff. We don't think that it's reasonable to do that all in 1 year. What we want to do is adjust in an orderly manner to not negatively impact student instruction. So like Mr. Ball said, we've got a good fund balance. And what that does is that allows us to make this adjustment over a 2-year cycle. I think that we can primarily accomplish the bulk of this through attrition. And as we go forward, we want to be very cognizant of the staff to student ratios so that we can keep that line parallel. There has been a leadership team consensus through this. Again, we've been meeting on this since October, and there has been active participation for each division in the budget process, and we continue to meet and discuss that. There will be reductions in each of the central administration divisions. Also being impacted in this budget cycle will be the grant funds. We know that we have a substantial amount of special revenue funds. I think it was about $150 million combined on the last CAFR, Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. Fort Worth ISD's enrollment reduction of 7% will also result in some reduction in the federal spending. So those two things parallel. And we also have carryover funds that we didn't have in the previous cycle due to 2019-20. We didn't spend a lot. So we addressed some instructional needs in the current cycle. However, that's going to impact it next year without that carryover funding being available. Federally funded staff will receive notification. They received notification in January, and those communications go out because when you have the reduction in grant funding that are largely staff, all of that will not be able to be sustained going forward. We're making sure that we keep the grant funds in step in the budget cycle in the current 21-22 budget process. Slide, please. Slide, please. Okay. The staffing action plan, we've been working together since October. There's a collaborative staffing approach, a cross-functional team of HCM, student support, budget and finance, and Ms. Molinar have all been working very collaboratively together to make sure that we have a good staffing plan, and we have that. We want to develop consensus on the approach and the information to be considered. You'll remember last year, the 2019-20 budget cycle for the 2021 year, we worked with Educational Resource Strategies on a secondary staffing and scheduling process, and Dr. Sines is following up in year 2 of that, and Dr. Pena is heading up the staffing in that same manner with the elementary staff. Throughout this process, communication is key. I know that on the January 28th meeting, there was a discussion and a presentation about the staffing process for the 2021 budget cycle. And so those things at the campus level have been in place, and we work in the central administration building on a staffing plan as well. Slide, please. With that said, I'll be happy to entertain any questions at this point.
All right, looks like Trustee Robbins is up first.
Thank you, President Ramos. And thank you, Mr. Johnson and Mr. Ball, for the information. It's very useful and very helpful. And I'd say in general, our budget planning, even, with the malware we suffered last year is excellent. And you've done a very good job in keeping us informed of what to expect going forward. So we're very grateful for that. I'm particularly interested in the federal funded employees. How many federal and funded employees do we have? And I know you said you didn't think that attrition could handle everything, but do we try to attrit federally funded, unfunded employees into regular jobs? And I know it's dependent on job skills and so on, but how does that work? And can you give us an example, a kind of a feel of what we might expect going forward?
Great question, Trustee Robbins, and I'd be happy to try to address that. To answer your first question about how many employees do we have that are compensated through federal grants, it's somewhere between 1,000 and 1,100 employees.
Wow.
And our plan is to right size our staff through attrition, and our hope is, and if this year is consistent with history, we will have enough turnover so that we can right size about half of what we know we need to over the 2-year period through attrition. One of the difficulties with attrition is you rarely have the attrition in the area where you really need to have it.
Yeah.
And so I think two things we're trying to do is, we're not trying to do them, we've already begun doing them, and that is to notify these 1,000 to 1,100 people. The first round of those communications has gone out about a week and a half ago, I believe. And all of those people got a communication that said, just a reminder, you're in a grant-funded position. And what the intent of those communications is not to create panic or upheaval in people's lives, but to treat people like we would want to be treated. And that is to give them plenty of notice that if they're not okay with that contingency, then it gives them plenty of time. Then they can look for other alternatives within the district. They can, as they see jobs that are posted, they have the opportunity to kind of take some initiative of their own and look at other alternatives that might be suitable for them. And we plan to continue that communication process as we approach the actual statutory deadline for notifying people that are under a Chapter 21 contract. If their job is going to change, we want to give them adequate notice that positions the district legally to make changes if it's deemed necessary and in the best interest of the district.
Thank you. Thank you. Good answer. Thank you. That's all.
Okay. Next, we have Trustee Jackson.
Thank you, President Ramos. If we could place slide 4 up first for my first question, if it's okay. So there's a reference for the community. Thank you so much. One more. Thanks. So we saw 2019-20, the number of FTEs, and we saw the drop was 220. So we saw a 2% drop in actual staff decline. If we looked at those numbers as compared to, if we look at the enrollment numbers, if you go to slide 5, it's 3. Thank you. Have we looked at that and assessed what our attrition rates look like from 2012 to current with employees? I know there are some positions that are faculty, that are programs that are being phased out, etc. So some of those positions will need to be maintained. But I'm just a little confused as to how we had this enrollment that went from 2012 to 2017, and we saw this strong trend velocity in 2017, that continued to 2020, and then obviously the 2020-21 dip. What actions did the team take at that time to right-size staff from those years?
That's a great question, Trustee Jackson. We have seen a slight decline. If you look at that graph, we peaked out at about just over 87,000 students, and then over that 4-year period, from 2016 to 2020, we got down just below 83,000, which is obviously that's about a 4,000 student drop. And so we have been on that slight downward trajectory since the high point there, and we have been reducing staffing through attrition in order to right size it to enrollment for some time now. The thing that's unusual, obviously, as has been pointed out also about the taper report, is the impact of COVID. While we did anticipate a slight decline in enrollment, I don't think anyone anticipated a decline of 7%, which is what we're looking at. And so there has been the reduction in staffing to right size with enrollment is not a new concept for us, but we're presented with the current reality. It's a little more impactful to us than it has been over the since 2017 when we were at our high point.
Thank you, and I know you weren't here for some of that time, so thank you for taking that question. And if we could go to slide 6. This one really caught my attention with staffing versus enrollment, and we see the crossing of the points in 2017. That's usually an indication that something is shifting. We see it is. And then if we look at the gap in 2021, red versus blue line, I think it's about 11%. That's a huge gap. And I know that's due to COVID, but we had other gaps and other indicators as far back as 2019. I just want to make sure that we assess this, and it sounds like you all have, and moving forward that we take the lessons that we're paying for right now and we go lean. And one of those things would be that Templeton has predicted our demographics, and every year they've had a pretty big over prediction of enrollment as compared to what we have. So I'm just concerned about it, and I think we need to go light and lean, and I fully support taking the measures that we need to. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Jackson. And if I could just add a couple things. One is this is not unique to Fort Worth ISD. The urban districts across the state have seen significant decreases in enrollment. 6-7% lately has been the average. Secondly, we also a few years ago passed the implementation principles of our efficiency study. So I think staying on that path and continuing to implement the recommendations of the efficiency study will help us get to where we need to be. And then finally, if you'll remember, and I think you and I had this conversation offline, that the overwhelming majority of the dip in enrollment is pre-K and kindergarten. So those students haven't picked up and moved to a different town. Parents have, during the pandemic, have intentionally made the intentional decision to keep students home, and that's entirely understandable. We're gonna have a lot of ground to make up academically as a result, but it's our hope that this may be a bit of a one-off given the pandemic. Hopefully, with vaccines being more readily distributed over the summer, hopefully we can recover, but still implement those efficiency study recommendations and have those lines cross yet again.
I think that sounds great, and I just hope that we will. I don't hope. I believe that we should. It's just a personal opinion. Our enrollment should be. We should base ourselves on a 10 to 15% less enrollment, and then if we hit above that, we have some extra funds and they can be placed where they need to be placed. I know the city did that and corrected a pension, and I think this is the time to be lean and mean. So if we predict the same students that we did last year to reassess budget by this year, I think we're going to find ourselves in a similar situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Jackson. Trustee Brookins?
Do you think that the charter schools or the new schools that are coming in, do you think that's one of the factors as well as far as the low enrollments?
That's a great question, Trustee Brookins. I think there are two factors. One is, as Dr. Scribner pointed out, that some of the very youngest students, there's what we're seeing really across the state and even across the nation, what some are calling a red shirt year, that parents are just holding the students out of school in the hopes that there will be a vaccine or some other development that will that will make them feel more okay about bringing their students to school. And so one of the thought processes we've been through in developing a 2-year plan is that while we don't want to focus on, we don't want to bet on something that hasn't happened yet, as Trustee Jackson pointed out, there is some possibility that some of those students will return next year. And so what we don't want to do is make drastic reductions that have a negative impact on instruction to students, and then later learn that we didn't need to do that after all. And so the second factor that, as you have pointed out, is the impact of charters. And I think prospectively, the ultimate outcome of that may have to do with what the legislature does in terms of providing funding for traditional public school districts to provide remote instruction. And if that's not available to us, that would put the traditional school districts such as Fort Worth ISD at a competitive disadvantage.
And I'm sorry, if I may, Trustee Brookins, also add that this is a 100-year pandemic that really was upended all of our trends. Up until last year, in fact, our pre-K numbers were steady and growing. And actually, in 1 year, it was the only place we saw growth. The only place we saw growth over the last 5 years, and we intensely marketed that. But certainly we hope to recover very quickly, and we do have some enrollment plans. If I may, Trustee Brookins, to throw it to Deputy Superintendent Molinar so she can speak to those.
And we're happy to come and share more details with our board trustees and actually email you some things as well. But we're starting our open enrollment earlier this year just to recapture not only our students who are currently enrolled, but who will be enrolling for the 21-22 school year by opening our Power School earlier than we've done in the past. We also are working with Fort Worth and some external partners. We have identified pre-K students and K students who enrolled last year in Fort Worth ISD but have not returned, and they are assisting us with actually going back and really finding those kids, seeing what their plans are next year, and outreaching face-to-face instead of just through social media or phone calls, but really going door knocking and asking them, how can we get you back into Fort Worth ISD and how important it is, as well as sharing our plan for keeping our schools as we have this year open and safe, and sharing and asking what questions they have about safety protocols. Also, some of our partners, our after-school partners, are working with us on surveying parents on what conditions that they're concerned about, so we can address those and be more transparent in our communication. Overall, we know charter schools are becoming into our area more. However, when we're looking at our T-REX reports where we can track our students, we're really not seeing that many of our students are leaving for charter. This year, our decrease in enrollment was really due to COVID. Some of our older students have chose to work instead of come to school, even though we've been very flexible with our hybrid options with asynchronous and synchronous. And we're really hoping, just as a society, that we get back to school is not a choice. We also have been working with some of our city business partners. We used to have this really big drive to ask our business owners not to employ our students during school hours. We know that they're in the need right now to support their families. However, school has to be our priority. So we have reached out to see if we could really rally back around having our business owners support getting our students back into school during the school day, while still being able to maintain some type of work schedule for them after school. So we do have some plans in place, and as we continue through, we really would like to come back and share with the board trustees or offer some mini sessions on specific plans.
I think that one of the things that you said about going door to door, that's going to be pretty crucial for those students that are coming from multi-generational households, where they're being raised by grandparents who are not technically savvy and are not on the internet every day. So having them see you all in the community after COVID starts slowing down a little bit, I think it's going to be good for them to know that you are coming out to enroll our students. And also another thing that a way that we can reach out to the communities is meeting with the mayors. I took Mr. Robinson from O.D. Wyatt to the Forest Hill City Council meeting, and they were excited to hear all the opportunities that O.D. Wyatt had. They had never met with anybody, and just to know that now that they know who he is and he knows who they are, and putting together that partnership, I think, is going to help with the municipalities being our cheerleader for our communities to help with enrollment.
Okay. Thank you, Trustee Brookins. Looks like there are no more questions. Any more questions from the board? Trustee Lebanos?
Not a question, but a comment. Thank you to Ms. Molinar for that report. Gives me an idea on where we are, and thank you for all you guys doing to continue to help our students in the classroom where they belong.
Good deal. Thank you. Looks like those are all the questions or comments from the board on the financial piece. We're going to move on to item number 6, where I will turn it over to Trustee Paz to lead the discussion on Lone Star Governance Framework, the advocacy piece.
Thank you, President Ramos. And thank you to my board colleagues for creating space for us to have this conversation tonight. So yesterday, our advocacy team met with our Lone Star Governance coach, Del Latham, and discussed some of the options for our board to better engage in the advocacy initiatives for our Lone Star Governance Framework. So first, I would like to introduce my colleagues on the advocacy team. It is comprised of myself and Trustee Evans, CJ, and also Andar. And after I'm going to share some of the information that we discussed and briefly review our advocacy framework, and then I will turn it over to each of them to share their perspectives as well. So our goal for this conversation tonight is for our board to come to an agreement on the number of meetings, of community meetings that we would have around advocacy and the expectations for what is communicated in those meetings. So before I get into the recommendations, I will briefly review the advocacy goals that are in that are from our Lone Star Governance Framework. So if you have them, if you have the Lone Star Governance Manual, you're feel free to open it. You don't have to. I'm not going to read every item line by line. And for our members of the community who might be watching at home, if you wanted to learn more about this and about our Lone Star Governance Framework, you can actually just Google Lone Star Governance Manual, and it'll be like the first or second thing that comes up on a Google search, and it's directly on the TEA website. And so it's on the page number 23 of the LSG Texas Framework. So I'm going to start with what would be our, actually let me open it up and look at it really quick. So what comes up first under preparing to focus is that a board will have a two-way communication system in place where at least once per year we do two things. The first is listen and discuss our vision and values of our student. And the second is listen and discuss the vision and values of our staff and our community. And then moving to the guidelines for what a school board that approaches focus would look like. That is providing time during our regularly scheduled board meetings to recognize the accomplishments of students and staff regarding our progress towards student outcome goals. And then next, that we would have hosted a community meeting or meetings to discuss student outcome goals and progress, specifically including our low-performing campus feeder pattern. And so that would be, and you would want to discuss the performance for the previous 12 months. And so that is approaches focus. Under meets focus, we would have all of the things from the previous two items, plus in our boardroom, we would have displayed an updated status of all of our goals and goal progress measures so that the community and anyone who comes into the boardroom can see them and that they are front and center as we discuss the different, or as we just conduct our business. And then the last item for meets focus is that our board would have led or co-led at least one Lone Star governance training. And then when we move over to master's focus, that includes the additional points of including students and future board members in a Lone Star governance training session or orientation, specifically to future board members. Prior to them being sworn into office, they would have received an orientation for the Lone Star Governance Framework so that they're ready to hit the ground running the day that they get sworn in. So that's essentially what, just like the check boxes that we would want to achieve. But really, we need to understand the purpose of advocacy and why we would want to do these things. So essentially, when school board members have built the capacity to govern and can effectively articulate the importance of governance in their roles, then they become active in building confidence among the communities that they serve. And then when those communities have confidence in their school boards, they also report having higher levels of confidence in their local schools and their school districts. So it's not just about building trust and relations with the school board and getting the community to understand the importance of governance. It's also about building confidence in the school district as a whole. So the checkpoints that I just outlined in the framework actually define a way for us to be able to do that. and then we have, I wanted to, I read this to our team yesterday while we were having this conversation. And I wanted to also read it to the board. It's really short, but this is from the actual training that our Lone Star governance coaches receive. And it explains the importance of the community-led trainings. So what they say is teaching school board members and superintendents about effective governance will create short-term results. To create lasting results, school board members must teach their communities about effective governance as well. In addition, boards that experience effectiveness over the long term ensure that all new school board members have been taught about effective governance prior to filing and or being elected to office. So that's very timely. We know that we will have at least one new school board member this May, so it's a timely discussion. So now I'd like to get into the actual heart of what our team reviewed yesterday. So, ideally we would like to have 2 to 4 board members per meeting with regional diversity, plus at least one A-team member, and those are both recommendations from the Lone Star governance training. And then we had a conversation about how many meetings we would like would be best to have, and how we would how we could possibly divide up the meetings if we were to do, have 13 meetings for all of the different feeder patterns, or we could break it up by regions. The district has 4 different regions that have the different feeder patterns, 3 to 4 feeder patterns per district or per region, and so we could divide them up that way. The challenge with doing it like that is that most of the regions, not all of them, but most of the regions are divided based on geography, which means that you're unintentionally going to have, or I guess you're going to lack an audience that you're essentially going to have more of like a monolithic audience. You're not going to have the diversity. You want to have multiple perspectives there, listening and learning about your governance, your approach to governance, and your student outcome goals, and all of the information that you want to share. So what we eventually decided on, and the recommendation that we are bringing to the board, is hosting 4 meetings. One would be a meeting that is conducted entirely in Spanish, and then the other 3 would be divided by elementary, middle, and high school. So if you have, if you have kids that are in elementary school and high school, you can pick one or the other, or you could attend both if you wanted. They would be virtual, so conducted through Zoom, just like the previous town halls that we've done. But the really important thing is that it's the board members who are leading the conversations and being supported by staff, so that we can articulate the importance of, why we need to focus on student outcome goals and not, facilities goals or transportation goals and whatnot. Let's see here. What else am I missing? I'm kind of going back and forth between a couple of documents here. So they would be, initially these would be virtual meetings, but the whole goal is to be able to do this once a year, where all of the trustees participate. So with 4 meetings, some trustees would probably have to do 2 meetings if they wanted to. We would ideally have, just a diverse group of trustees in each one. And like I said, no fewer than 2, no more than 4, because you want to avoid a quorum. And as we learned in our Lone Star governance training, a community-led meeting with 1 trustee is not a community-led meeting, it's a campaign stop. So that's why it's important to have multiple trustees engaging. And also, when you are have multiple people involved, then you have a better, you just have a better atmosphere. And so the Karen, who is our Fort Worth ISD Chief of Policy and Planning, will be, she will work on a draft presentation with content for the meetings. And ideally, we would be able to have all of these conducted by the end of March to provide as much space between the end of those meetings and the upcoming school board elections, just to, kind of keep politics out of them, but also that keeps us within our first quarter as well. And I think that is everything. Oh, it's not. So during these meetings, what would we discuss? And essentially it is, what does advocacy or what does governance look like in Fort Worth ISD? So you really want to ask three big questions. So what does the school board do? What is the role of the school board? What is, what is the role of the superintendent? Defining that board work versus superintendent work, owner service versus customer service. And, we had some ideas about, sharing how TEA and CDC decisions impact our decision making, especially as it pertains to like COVID. And then how do we apply our Lone Star governance model to monitor our student outcome goals? So first of all, you have to actually identify what your goals are, and then your goal progress measures, and articulate the importance of the fact that those goals and also constraints those are the board's goals or the district's goals, but they're also the superintendent's goals, and they are directly tied to an evaluation. And the way that this aligns our vision and mission of the Fort Worth ISD community back into the outcomes we expect to see for the classroom. And finally, covering the monitoring calendar and explaining to our communities that this is how you know what our school board is going to be talking about every month for the next year. So I feel like I kind of rushed through that, but I also want to be conscious of time. So on that note, I will turn it over to Anne and then CJ for any comments and color commentary they would like to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Paz. I think you covered it quite nicely. I think just to kind of sum things up, we're looking at 4 meetings, 1 for elementary, 1 for middle, 1 for high school, and then 1 that is completely in Spanish before the end of March, with 3 to 4 trustees represented at each meeting, a member of Dr. Scribner's team, and ensuring that we are not going to have a quorum. That doesn't mean that you as a trustee, I know that if I'm not the board trustee that is on that panel of trustees for that meeting, I will certainly still want to listen to the meeting because I want to hear the concerns and the comments that are made by the community. So that's always an option. And that's about it. EJ, do you want to add anything?
Yes, I'll be brief. Thank you, Trustee Paz, for carrying the load on that report. I wanted to say one thing about the way we are breaking up the 4 meetings. Because of COVID, we're going to be doing them virtually anyway. So instead of, we initially started, I think the actual Lone Star governance meets or, criteria talks about having the meetings within the pyramids. But so we kind of initially started grouping them by pyramids, but then we thought, well, we're all virtual. This is going to be virtual anyway. I can't remember who came up with the idea of breaking it up by elementary, middle, and high. And so I'm excited about that because student achievement, looks a little differently at those different levels. And so maybe the questions the parents have, or maybe their understanding of what, this is what they're examining at the elementary level. It just will maybe streamline it some. And of course, we don't know how long we're going to have some of the COVID restrictions in terms of 2022, if it's virtual or not, but maybe if it's well attended and well received, we could have these annual community governance meetings virtually, so we can kind of focus on the different grade level groups in terms of student achievement. That's just a thought that is not set in stone, and that will just kind of depend on maybe what the community wants. Maybe in 2022, the governance community town hall is in person at 4 different corners of the city, but it's just a thought.
Trustee Robbins?
Thank you, President Ramos. I'm curious, since we're going to have elementary, middle, and high, will the Spanish meeting cover all of those areas, or will it cover something else? And then also, I'm really grateful we're doing this. This has been the missing link for us getting to master, is to include the community. And I would hope that we would do it more than once a year, because quite frankly, it's going to take a while to educate the community on what really the role of the board is, because right now they don't have a clue, and never have, and we need to make sure that they do, which will make all of our lives a lot simpler, I think, once we're able to do that. But I do think it'll take more than once a year.
Yes, thank you, Trustee Robbins, and you're absolutely right. I do think that it will take more than once a year. We want to start off, we want to take, we don't want to bite off more than we can chew right off the bat, but that's certainly something that our board can explore. And a great question about what the Spanish town hall will cover, and because I actually brushed over that. So each town hall will cover the same content. You're going to be covering the exact same goals, goal progress measures, constraints, constraint progress measures, monitoring calendar. You just might, your elementary parents might have a different set of, their questions and concerns might be different than your middle school or high school parent. As a middle school parent, and I know there are others on the board with middle school students as well, you don't have as much parent engagement in middle school. That's kind of the point where you're like, my kids are out of elementary school, I can breathe, I'm gonna, go do something else other than PTA, or, it's harder in middle school. So, we want to make sure that the same information is covered in each meeting, so that we're consistent, but also this allows us to break it up in a way that where we are not separating our audience by racial groups or regional, geographically, or even with affinity groups. So it's just keeping them out or separated by age. And then of course we want to be conscious of ensuring that our Spanish speaking community has a town hall that is that they can attend, and that is inclusive and available for them as well.
Thank you. That makes sense. Thank you.
I think that one of the things we talked about, and when you're teaching anybody anything, the more applicable it is to their own personal lives, it applies to them, the more likely they are to remember it. And so we can do a grandiose presentation on Lone Star governance and what it is, and if it doesn't relate to their lives, and if it doesn't apply to their lives, then they're not going to be as engaged, and they're not going to be as likely to remember what it is that was discussed or mentioned, or even the key elements of Lone Star government. So by breaking it up between high school, middle school, and elementary school, we can hopefully not only address what governance is, what the role of the superintendent and Dr. Scribner's team is, but to really kind of apply it more to some of what those parents are dealing with at those different ages so that they can better understand it, because we'll have some real world examples. I think it will be important, and I would love to see us schedule the meeting that's in Spanish at the end, not because I want them to feel like they're an afterthought or anybody is an afterthought, but because so that we can take some of the questions from the elementary meeting and some of the questions from the middle school meeting and some of the questions from the high school meeting to make sure that all of those issues are being addressed with our Spanish speaking community. That's just a thought, and it may not schedule that way. But again, I don't want it to feel like that they're not being prioritized by being the last meeting, but just so that we can get that information to everyone.
Trustee Brookins?
I was just gonna comment on, I really appreciate the breakdown from elementary to middle school to high school. I think that's gonna make a big difference because if I'm a parent and I have a student that's in high school, I wouldn't want to go, I'm not going to have the same questions as somebody who has students that are in elementary. So I really appreciate that. And I think it's going to help with attendance if we, like Mr. Robbins said, that if we do it more than once and spread it out, if we can do it quarterly, I think that would be good until we know that the community understands what we're doing, and the questions kind of trickle out, and we don't have as many people attending. But I think just spreading it out like that was going to help with attendance, and especially for right now with a lot of people not leaving their homes, I think we'll have a lot of people that are going to want to participate in the very beginning.
Great. Are we good, trustees?
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that everyone, if you have any feedback and you prefer not to, share it right now, we're, Ann, CJ, and I are all happy to hear it and to bring it back to our subgroup. And I'm really excited about us hitting the proverbial streets and sharing our governance journey with the community. And one thing that I did leave out is that we did discuss kind of in depth how we, because this has to be a two-way flow of information. And so, taking questions in advance that we can make sure that we're covering as we're speaking, and then also afterwards, not necessarily taking questions from the audience because it's on Zoom, but having someone who can kind of scroll through the comments and even just capturing the comments that are there in the chat section of the Zoom is a huge benefit. I mean, not everyone is going to be able to chime in and ask a question or provide feedback in real time, but they can do it through those through that comment section, and then we will try to answer some questions there as well. And before we move on, I just wanted to give Karen an opportunity to share anything from her perspective as the A-team member that was supporting our conversation yesterday.
I just want to say I'm really excited how the meeting went yesterday, and just our commitment. And Mr. Robbins, this has always been something you've challenged us on, is just more transparent communication. With that, we will be developing FAQs after each meeting, as Ms. Paz, Trustee Paz shared. We will script the questions, and if we don't have the opportunity to answer them right then, we will pull them. And between trustees and administration, we will make sure we have those posted on our webpage after each meeting, because it is really important to us that we also hear what the community and our parents are saying. This is not just about Lone Star governance for points for self-evaluation, but for administration, it really is about us becoming better, stronger, and having a stronger relationship with our parents. So we appreciate from administration that our trustees are willing to stand beside us and hold these meetings, and we look forward to working towards better communication and transparency.
Awesome. Okay. Looks like that's a wrap on the governance. Good work, team. Appreciate your work and your input on that, and I'm excited as well. We will now get ready to reconvene and close meeting for executive session. So the time is 7:24 p.m. The date is Tuesday, February 9th, 2021. We will now recess and reconvene virtually for executive session as authorized by Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code under Sections 551.071, .072, .074, and .076.
Like this new entrance at Southwest High School, there are great things taking shape at Fort Worth ISD. Yes, COVID-19 is still with us, but more immunizations and new vaccines on the way give us hope. Already, there are many reasons to be excited about the future for our students. And some of those reasons are right here. The progress we're making on far-reaching initiatives is something to celebrate, starting with our all-out campaign to get children registered for pre-K and kindergarten.
I belong here.
Soon, you'll see TV commercials, billboards, and other ads telling parents your child belongs here in our district. And families, you'll be glad to know our pre-K online registration is getting great reviews. In a recent survey, parents praised the process and said it was easy.
Oh, I'm just so happy.
Families of young students are also welcoming some essential technology.
We want to make sure each student has a Chromebook in hand.
This month, we began distributing Chromebooks to pre-K through 5th grade students. It's part of our one-to-one initiative to make sure all students have the technology needed to learn, at school and at home.
I love it.
We've already supplied secondary students with the devices.
Approved pyramid realignment.
In another move toward equity, we're implementing some school boundary changes and organizing feeder patterns The vertical alignment allows students to go through elementary, middle, and high school as a cohort, giving them more continuity in their education and allowing teachers to better track and support their success. Boundary changes to the Eastern Hills, North Side, and South Hills pyramids take effect next fall. Changes were made last fall to the Benbrook and Western Hills pyramids. And finally, the most dramatic changes as we wrap up, right on budget, the 2017 CIP, Capital Improvement Program. The CIP got off to an impressive start with construction of Overton Park Elementary and athletic fields and facilities across the district. Then, the CIP added to and renovated portions of every high school for 21st century learning. The work included stunning new front entrances, secure vestibules at entrances, modern student collaboration areas, convenient charging stations where lockers once were.
Good morning. Wow, what a great place. It is a great place. And
redesigned Go Centers, where college and career readiness coaches help students map their pathway to post-secondary success.
We can do scholarships and career matching. It's just really good to plan our futures out.
Many of the new additions house cutting-edge career and technical centers, where students in gold-sealed programs of choice build workplace skills and earn industry certifications, and even their associate degree in high school. Among the facilities are state-of-the-art media centers, including an amazing production bus, soon to look like this, for live sports events and all kinds of media projects. A cosmetology studio, and an elaborate mariachi hall at Northside High School. A new JROTC facility at Diamond Hill Jarvis.
Qualities of an effective teacher.
And an education center at Southwest High School, complete with a mock elementary classroom for future teachers to practice their skills. Yes, Fort Worth ISD is looking and moving forward. And what's really exciting, so are our students.
I plan on going to Texas A&M to study civil engineering. After that, I plan on going into the Army.
I plan to go into criminal justice and graduate from Sam Houston State.
So why are you interested in zoology?
I've loved animals, and zoology just seems the right path to go.
The future is bright.
Hello, parents and students. This is Superintendent Kent Scribner. Thank you for watching this short video about two extraordinary Fort Worth ISD Gold Seal choices. They're innovative models of learning that are leading the way in preparing students for college and the modern workforce. Early college high schools and pathways in technology, or P-TECH early college high schools. And all are golden. Just watch.
Early College High School and P-TECH Early College High Schools offer students opportunities to earn up to an associate degree while in high school, in partnership with colleges, universities, and Fort Worth ISD. All tuition fees, resources, and books are provided for students at no cost, which saves families 2 years' worth of college expenses. In early college high school, students receive college credit up to an associate degree while in high school, accelerated learning, specialized study skills that prepare them for university admission and scholarships, as well as the opportunity to enter the workplace with college credit hours. P-TECH early college high schools provide the same opportunities as early college high schools, plus work-based, hands-on learning. So P-TECH students not only earn college credit, they also build industry skill sets, participate in job shadowing and internships, and earn certifications, industry credentials, their high school diploma, and up to an associate degree.
Parents and students, you can learn more at fwisd.org/choice, including how to apply to an early college high school or P-TECH early college high school. Industry-driven Gold Seal programs and schools of choice offer Fort Worth ISD families and students the power of choice, now more than ever, to go beyond the basic, beyond the traditional, to find the pathway that's a match to a student's interest, goals, and learning style. And just look at the programs and schools to choose from. You've got goals and dreams for the future. We've got a high school experience to match.
There you go.
They can sign up.
Fort Worth ISD Gold Seal programs of choice are built for dreamers like you.
You do one simple.
The problem solvers,
the curious minds, the creators of art and ideas. Gold Seal programs deliver expert guidance, your checklist, hands-on learning, certifications, college credits, and community partners who support your learning. A great example? Our P-Tech early college high schools that combine high school, college, and career. So the idea is to grow. Students can earn an associate degree. Ready to go? Visit job sites, build relationships, and develop workplace skills and knowledge. Our partners enrich every Gold Seal program, open doors to careers, and put you ahead of the herd. There's a Gold Seal pathway to fit your interests.
So let's give it a shot.
Whether it's making machines run better and fly higher,
Sales inside of it. Can't replace it better.
or improving health
Do you have any allergies?
and housing. Whether it's serving on the front lines,
Are y'all set? All right, we're ready.
or protecting citizens online.
Yeah, moving on the frames.
Bring your biggest dreams and determination here,
Really great product.
where you belong, in a Fort Worth ISD program of choice.
Take graphic.
Your choice. The atmosphere is electric at Fort Worth ISD Gold Seal Schools of Choice. These smaller, well-focused learning communities prepare students for college and careers in the most innovative ways.
This combines art and math.
Now we know what to do.
Every school day hums with activity and empowerment at Young Men's Leadership Academy and Young Women's Leadership Academy.
Come across one.
Future leaders are at work here, gaining knowledge, experiences, and character while developing lifelong strategies for success. Move toward your dreams at the I Am Terrell Academy for STEM and VPA. On the STEM side, students design and problem solve in a high-tech makerspace. In VPA, students train in state-of-the-art studios and perform in a magnificent hall. The school's Cowan Academy in the Humanities elevates the study of literature, history, art, and philosophy. Imagine learning multiple languages, exploring global cultures, and taking academic courses in English and Spanish. The World Languages Institute is perfect for students from Spanish immersion and dual language programs, and anyone else eager to learn Spanish immersion style. Early college high schools merge high school, college, and career. Students go to school on Tarrant County College campuses and can earn an associate degree for free. Marine Creek Collegiate High School focuses on high academic achievement and skills for success.
Got a slightly movable
The
joint.
Texas Academy of Biomedical Sciences is a hub of health science studies with hands-on laboratory learning supported by medical industry partners. TCC South Fort Worth ISD Collegiate High takes industry partnerships to a new level. It's the district's first P-Tech early college high school. Partners such as Encore and the Fort Worth Water Department help students build skills that industries want. Schools of choice are not just for older students. Collectively, 4 applied learning academies serve kindergarten through the 8th grade. Students apply their knowledge to solve real-life issues as they investigate the bigger world.
6 taken 2 times.
Our Montessori program guides kindergarten through 8th grade students in multi-age classrooms that are safe and respectful. Students work through lessons, interact with others, cultivate self-discipline, and take early ownership of their education. A great start to a lifetime of learning. One-size-fits-all education is so last century. Pick your cutting-edge Gold Seal pathway to college, career, and community leadership.
For more information, visit fwisd.org/choice, where you'll find the Gold Seal catalog and the Let's Talk link for your questions. You may also call the campus of the program or school you're interested in.
If you walked into a classroom, could you spot racial bias or racial inequity? Things like
How the students engage in the classroom and how the teacher engages with them, how they interact with each other.
Would you see it?
I personally really want to see a lot more representation of minorities and underserved communities in classrooms such as AP classrooms.
Would you hear it?
Sometimes students, any other of my friends and teachers make fun of my accent.
Any racially unequal treatment of students, no matter how unintentional, does harm. And that is why we walk.
We're so glad to be here at Monning Middle School.
It's how every Fort Worth ISD Racial Equity Walk starts. A quick meeting of teachers, district administrators, the principal, and the school's equity team.
And we're going to visit classrooms using our lens of racial equity.
We run through the protocol, things like observing, asking questions, and gathering information by isolating race. There's also a checklist of things to look for.
We're going to look at the walls. We're going to look how teachers interact with students.
I would ask that we also have a lens on what are students being asked to do.
And there's a reminder of the seriousness of the task.
We're going to experience some discomfort because we're going to ask some tough questions today.
Before the walk, the principal and her campus equity team provide data broken down by race.
Our African American students are not receiving what they need to be performing as well as their white peers.
One of the things that's I think interesting about this campus is that in fact it is diverse.
So you've got some successes, but we've got some opportunities for growth as well.
And then a final reminder before breaking into teams.
This is never to be a gotcha. They know the kinds of questions we're going to ask, and definitely know that we're coming in the spirit of support.
Okay, so we're going to be heading towards Jenkins.
This team's first stop is a humanities class.
What is moral law?
You should love life in the pursuit of happiness.
It's a class of racially diverse, engaged students.
We have given our hearts away, a sordid boon. Good job, thank you.
For the next hour, with a lens of raciil equity sharply focused, the teams observe classes in almost every subject. English.
And then she turned to me.
Math, science, social studies, special education, art, and PE. Each team member refers back to their list of look-fors, including the lesson materials. Do they reflect the student body? Are there opportunities for students to speak and listen? Where are the students seated? Is there small group instruction? Does the art and pictures on the walls depict multiple cultures? The teams take notes and ask questions.
How do we make sure all of our offerings are high quality?
It's a majority of students of color in your regular classes, and it's about 50-50 in your pre-AP classes. And so why is that happening?
We're going to talk a little bit about some growth opportunities.
The walk ends with the teams back together for the most challenging part of the process, the debrief. We start with positive observations.
And the culturally responsive books, which was very good. And the kids were engaged, the teacher did an excellent job.
We visited 6 classrooms, and in all 6 classrooms there was evidence of relationships between teachers and their students.
Several of the classrooms, or most of them, had settings where the students had an opportunity to talk.
And then I want you guys to do a turn and talk, and we're going to do that for 3 minutes.
Then, the observations we call opportunities for improvement.
Who would like to begin the conversation?
A lot of the regular classes were actually overfilled with students of color.
The geometry class was largely white. There were 2 Latinx students in there, 1 biracial. And so it just made us think about how many kids are then actually transferring from pre-AP into the advanced coursework and what that says about our disparity rates in academics.
Our top math ones, that one is still not as diverse.
And there's no glossing over, just a real give and take aimed at finding solutions.
I have seen transformation on behalf of the staff, and Ms. Kirkpatrick spoke, adding diversity to the staff. So I think that It's very intentional.
The students felt empowered. You didn't see one race of student more comfortable in discussing the topic than another.
We make it fun and engaging, but still make it relevant to the concept that's being taught.
Equity walks remind us we can all do our jobs better. Thank you to our schools for their trust and transparency in support of a quality education for every child.
It's a really, really positive feeling about them, Monica, and your leadership, so thank you.
I think we're just waiting on Trustee Brookins.
Here. Present.
All right, good deal. We'll get started. In accordance with the open meetings law, the board opened the workshop at 5:30 p.m. in a private video conference with a quorum present, recessed and reconvened open session virtually, adjourned regular session, convened executive session, adjourned executive session, and now reconvened open session at 8:29 p.m. in the public virtual video conference with a quorum present. Trustees who are present here virtually are Trustee Jackson, you here?
Present.
Thank you. Trustee Phillips?
Yes, sir. Present.
Thank you. Trustee Brookins?
Present.
Thank you. Trustee Evans?
Present.
Great. Trustee Dar?
Present.
Thank you. Trustee Robbins?
Present.
Thank you. Trustee Lebanos?
Present.
Thank you. Trustee Paz?
Present.
And I am Trustee Ramos, and I am present. We will move on to number 10, action item 10A, approve COVID-19 site interlocal agreement between Tarrant County and Fort Worth Independent School District. Do I have a motion? A motion by Trustee Lebanos. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Jackson. I'll call on each trustee just in case we have any discussion or for any discussion. Trustee Jackson, any discussion?
No discussion, sir.
Thank you. Trustee Phillips?
No discussion.
Thank you. Trustee Brookins?
No discussion.
Thank you. Trustee Evans?
No discussion.
Thank you, Trustee Dart.
No discussion.
Thank you, Trustee Robbins.
No discussion.
Thank you, Trustee Luevanos.
No discussion.
Thank you, Trustee Paz.
No discussion.
Thank you. Now, Trustee Ramos and I have no discussion. We'll move to vote. As I call your name, trustees, please say yes, no, or abstain. District 2 Trustee Toby Jackson.
Yes.
Thank you. District 3 Trustee Quentin Phillips.
Yes.
Thank you. District 4 Trustee Daphne Brookins.
Yes.
Thank you. District 5 Trustee CJ Evans.
Yes.
Thank you. District 6 Trustee Andar.
Yes.
Thank you. District 7 Trustee Norman Robbins.
Yes.
Thank you. District 8 Trustee Ana Luevanos.
Yes.
Thank you. District 9 Trustee Ashley Paz.
Yes.
Thank you. And I'm District 1 Trustee Jacinto Ramos Jr. and I vote yes. The motion passes 9-4 and 0 against. At this time, we've come to our time to adjourn. The time is 8:32 p.m. This meeting is